Emilie has always been the ultimate Dendro sub-DPS whenever Burning Reaction is in the play, but there never had been much incentive for players to build a Burning Reaction-based team as there were better options available. But times have changed, and now there are certain enemies which are much easier to defeat with the help of Burning Reaction. And since Emilie deals a hell lot more damage when there are burning enemies nearby, she's the #1 pick for a Burning Reaction-based team. So in this video, I'm breaking down exactly how to build and use Emilie, along with her best weapons, artifacts, and teams in order to use Emilie to her maximal potential. Let's get started. So kicking things off with Emilie's talents, using her elemental skill creates a Lumidaus case, dealing AoE Dendro damage to enemies. After that, the case fires puffs of Puridu at nearby opponents every few seconds, dealing continuous Dendro damage. When nearby enemies are affected by burning, they start releasing scents every 2 seconds, which gets collected by this case. After gathering 2 scents, the case gets leveled up and starts firing an extra puff of Puridu at enemies, dealing more damage. Also, the damage dealt by these attacks and its range gets increased. So basically, the Lumidaus case starts at level 1, but after collecting 2 scents from burning opponents, it gets upgraded to level 2, where its damage and range gets increased. However, if the case does not collect any scents for 8 seconds, it will go back to level 1. So, in order to deal maximum damage from Emilie's elemental skill, you need to burn the enemies, as the damage difference between level 1 and level 2 Lumidaus case is absurdly high. So, maybe she likes the smell of burning enemies as a perfume designer. Anyways, one of the best things about her elemental skill is that it lasts for as long as 22 seconds, while its cooldown is just 14 seconds, meaning that she will have 100% uptime on her elemental skill, dealing continuous Dendro damage to enemies. However, it's important to keep in mind that it doesn't deal damage in an AoE, rather, it only targets one enemy at a time. Now you can add another level to Emilie's Lumidaus case with the help of her elemental burst, cause after unleashing her burst, she instantly creates a level 3 Lumidaus case, putting aside any existing cases on the field. And that level 3 Lumidaus case continuously showers nearby enemies with scented dews, dealing Dendro damage. During this time, 1 drop of scented dew will descend every 0.3 seconds, and one opponent can become the target every 0.7 seconds. So, if there are multiple enemies within its range, it'll keep switching between its targets and will only hit those enemies which haven't received a hit for the last 0.7 seconds. While in case of a singular opponent, the enemy will only receive a hit after 0.7 seconds has passed since the last hit, which means that within a duration of 2.8 seconds, a single enemy will receive 4 hits of scented dews, while the rest of the dews fall without dealing any damage to that enemy. After the end of its duration, the Lumidaus case that was put aside will be redeployed, and its duration will be reset. So suppose if a level 2 Lumidaus case was present before using Emilie's burst, then after her burst duration ends, that level 2 Lumidaus case will be deployed again for another 22 seconds. So Emilie's elemental burst can be a great tool to increase the uptime of level 2 Lumidaus case, which will let Emilie deal more damage through her elemental skill. Additionally, each time the level 2 Lumidaus case collects 2 scents, it releases Cleardew Cologne, dealing AoE Dendro damage equal to 600% of Emilie's attack to opponents. The damage dealt by the Cleardew Cologne is quite substantial, and Emilie does a good chunk of her damage through this passive. Apart from that, when Emilie's Lumidaus case is on the field, her team members gain 85% pyro resistance against burning damage, which is quite helpful as burning reaction is like a double-edged sword which damages both enemies and the active character. And if you're not careful, then your active character might die from the burning damage. So that extra pyro resistance really helps in keeping the team safe. Also, Emilie's damage against burning opponents is increased based on her attack, where every 1,000 attack increases her damage by 15%. And in order to get the maximum damage bonus of 36%, she will need a total of 2,400 attack, which can be easily achieved with weapons having high base attack or with weapons providing a ton of attack bonus through substats or from its passive. With that in mind, let's talk about the best weapons for Emilie. Now, the absolute best weapon for Emilie is her signature weapon, Lumidaus Elegy. It gives her a solid base attack, as well as some attack bonus from its passive, but more importantly, it gives a great crit rate boost to Emilie and up to 36% damage bonus from its passive. Not only that, it also restores some energy for Emilie, which works super well with the low energy cost of her elemental burst, as she will be able to use her burst more frequently, which lets her reset the duration of the Lumidaus case, letting her deal continuous off-field damage to enemies. So it's definitely the best weapon for Emilie. That being said, Calamity Queller comes really close to her signature weapon, as it gives a massive attack boost to its wielders, especially if they're off-field like Emilie, and adds a 12% elemental damage bonus, which is perfect for Emilie, boosting her overall damage. Apart from this, you can also give her Staff of Homa or Symphonist Ascents, mostly for their strong main stats, but also because these will give at least some decent attack bonus to Emilie, which makes them a good overall option compared to any 4-star weapon. So, if you've one of these lying around, you can give it to Emilie. Similarly, you can also give her Primordial Jade Wing Spear just for its high base attack and crit rate, as it helps Emilie in reaching a good overall attack and maintaining a good crit ratio, with the help of which Emilie deals more damage than any other 4-star weapon, except in our 5 deathmatch. But even in our 1 deathmatch is a better option for Emilie than any other 4-star weapons. However, for an F2P player, Missive Wind Spear and Tamayurati no Ohanashi are both great options at max refinements. Favonius Lance works too, but mostly as a support option. As for Emilie's best artifacts, the Unfinished Reverie is the most ideal set for her, with its 2-piece giving her an 18% attack boost, while the 4-piece gives her up to 50% damage bonus when there are burning enemies nearby, which is perfect for Emilie, as you'll always be using her in burning teams. However, you can also use the 4-piece Deepwood Memories on Emilie, which gives her 15% Dendro damage bonus, and reduces enemies' Dendro resistance by 30% when her E-skill or bursts hit opponents. This not only increases her own damage, but also increases the damage of other Dendro characters in the party, which makes it a great option for Emilie if you're using her as a Dendro support for your main DPS like Kinich. Other than that, you can also use the Golden Troop set, which gives a total of 70% increase in her elemental skill damage, which is where most of Emilie's damage comes from. Although there is a catch to using this set for Emilie. If you remember, through one of her passive talents, she can deal 600% of her attack as AoE Dendro damage every 4 seconds when her Lumidaus case is at level 2. And she deals a big chunk of damage through this passive, but it's not considered as elemental skill damage. So, the Golden Troops set won't be able to buff this damage, which isn't the case with the other 2 sets. However, since Emilie deals continuous damage through her elemental skill, which is a big portion of her damage, and since this set offers 70% increment in elemental skill damage, you can still give this set to Emilie if you've already got some good spare ones to give her, until you finally have good artifact pieces of either of these 2 sets. So, in the order of preference, Unfinished Reverie is at the top, followed by Deepwood Memories, and then the Golden Troop set at the end. Alright, now it's time to talk about the best teams for Emilie, starting with the top-tier burning team for Emilie that includes Kinich, Emilie, Mavwika, and Benny. Now, Kinich and Emilie are the best pair to put in a burning team, as both of them deals more damage when burning reaction is in the play, and with the help of Deepwood Memories, Emilie will boost the damage of Kinich as well as herself. Then there's Mavwika, who not only helps with burning reaction, but can also be used as an off-field damage-dealing support option, who can provide up to 40% damage bonus to both Pyro and Dendro damage through this artifact, increasing the damage of both Kinich and Emilie along with Mavwika. Not only that, she can further boost Kinich's damage with the help of one of her passive talents, which increases the active character's damage after using her elemental burst. And then we also have Benny and Pyro Resonance to provide massive attack bonus to the whole party, which further increases both Emilie's and Mavwika's burst damage and Kinich's on-field damage, increasing the overall damage output of the team. Also, with the help of Kinich, Mavwika will get back Fighting Spirits for her elemental burst more quickly, which lets her use her burst more often, which in turn also boosts Kinich's damage. So, this team has really good synergy among characters, and it's one of the most powerful burning teams you can make for Emilie. Now, if you don't have Mavwika or want to use her as a DPS in some other team, then you can also use Dihya or Xiangling instead, where Dihya will be a good support option with Tenacity of the Millilith set, while Xiangling will be a good old reliable Pyro sub-DPS, dealing a lot of damage off-field. So, both are great alternatives in place of Mavuika. There are also other ways to build around burning. For example, you can replace Kinich with a pyro hypercarry like Arlecchino or Mavuika, who stays on-field dealing pyro damage, while Emilie dealing continuous dendro damage off-field, which keeps the burning reaction going, dealing continuous AoE pyro damage to enemies. Add in an Anemo support like Kazuha, who spreads the pyro aura and shreds enemies' pyro resistance, while Benny handles the heals and also buffs everyone's attack. With this, you've got a simple but effective monopyro team which deals consistent damage to opponents. And since Burning Reaction continuously applies pyro to enemies, you can use a cryo DPS like Ganyu or Ryathusly to deal amplified reverse melt damage, or use a hydro DPS like Molani to vaporize those burning enemies, dealing devastating damage to them. Similarly, in teams consisting of a pyro DPS who trigger Burning Reaction with Emilie, you can use Furina to deal strong vaporized damage, as well as provide buffs to the whole team, which ultimately increases the damage output of the whole team. There are also some niche team setups based on Burning Aggravate or Burning Overload, which are quite fun to use if you enjoy reaction-heavy teams. All in all, there are multiple great team options for Emilie, and you can choose the one which suits your playstyle. However, if you want the best team for Emilie, it's this one with Kinich and Mavuika, which is not only quite simple to use, but also deals the most damage. Alright, now let's dive into Emilie's constellations and see which ones really make a difference. So, her first constellation lets her deal 20% more damage from her elemental skill and her passive talents Clear Du Cologne, as well as helps Emilie in generating an additional scent from burning enemies, through which her Lumidaus case can quickly switch to level 2, and will shower Clear Du Cologne more often, dealing additional damage. In short, Emilie's C1 gives a direct and noticeable bump to the damage dealt by her elemental skill and Clear Du Cologne. Her second constellation takes it further by reducing enemies' dendro resistance by 30% whenever Emilie's elemental skill, elemental burst, or Clear Du Cologne hits opponents. This not only boosts her own damage, but also lets Emilie double as a support for other dendro characters on the team, amplifying their damage. Emilie's third constellation raises the talent level of her elemental skill by 3, which will increase the damage from her E-skill. However, keep in mind that this will not increase the damage dealt by Clear Du Cologne. Otherwise, this would have been a massive upgrade for Emilie. Then her fourth constellation increases the duration of her elemental burst by 2 seconds, causing 7 extra scented dews to descend, dealing additional damage to enemies. Also, the scented dews will lock onto targets 0.3 seconds faster, allowing more scented dews to hit the same enemy. This results in roughly a 75% boost to single target damage, which is really good while fighting against bosses or against tough solo enemies. With C5, her burst talent level gets increased by 3, further boosting its damage, while her C6 turns Emilie into a short-term DPS, where her swords gets infused with dendro for 5 seconds after using her elemental skill or burst, and the damage dealt by her normal and charge attacks gets increased by 300% of Emilie's attack, which gives a solid boost to her normal and charged attacks. Also, she will generate 1 cent whenever she uses her normal and charged attacks, which will help in quickly upgrading her Lumidaus case to level 2, as well as in dealing more damage through Clear Du Cologne. However, she can only generate up to 4 cents this way, after which the effect expires, which means that the Emilie can only use the dendro-infused attacks up to 4 times within 5 seconds. So she will not be a proper on-field DPS, and will be more like a part-time DPS who will deal tons of damage within a short duration, then goes back to dealing damage off-field. Now, all of her constellations are good, but if you want to get the most value out of your pulls, then look no further than her C2, which not only boosts Emilie's damage, but also lets her function as a team-wide dendro support, due to which her C2 becomes the most valuable constellation for Emilie, and it's the perfect stopping point while pulling for her constellations. Now, to sum up everything about Emilie, she is an off-field dendro sub-DPS who deals continuous dendro damage through her elemental skill, while her elemental burst lets her deal some quick damage while resetting the duration of her Lumidaus case, letting her deal non-stop damage off-field. Also, she deals a lot more damage overall when Burning Reaction is involved, so all of her best teams are based on Burning Reaction. And even if Burning is not a go-to reaction for most of the players while building a team, there are certain enemies that are much easier to defeat with the help of Burning Reaction. and Emilie will be the #1 pick while building a burning team to fight those enemies. So while Emilie's playstyle is niche, she makes burning reaction relevant and fun with her sheer damage-dealing capability. And if you are looking to build a burning team, you should definitely get Emilie into your team. And that wraps up everything about Emilie. Do let me know if you've any doubts in the comments, and I'll see you guys in my next video. See ya!